popular right to know meeting checklist. As chair of the planning board, due to COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities via video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through dialing the following phone number, 603-236-4730, or by clicking on the website address, www.watervillevalley.org. We are also providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the Town of Waterville Valley's website at watervillevalley.org. We're providing a mechanism for the public to alert this public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-236-4730 or email at townofwv@watervillevalley.org. Finally, we are adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. So let's start off with a roll call attendance. As before, I'll just prompt everyone so we go alphabetically, and if you have someone else in the room with you, they would count as public, so just give us a heads up if someone's there. So Nancy?
Nancy Knight, member.
Mike?
Mike Coppell, alternate. I don't think Millie counts.
Bill Larson? Not with us? Wendy Rathgaber, member. And I believe John was not able to join at 3. Don't see him. Rich?
We saw you, Rich.
Rich?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Rich Rita, ex officio.
And friend.
Bill Spence?
Bill Spence, member.
Terry Waite?
Terry Waite, member.
Rob? Let's see, Rob present. All right, so we'll go ahead and seat Mike for this meeting. All right, so we have gathered here to discuss potential issues with the Bethlehem landfill. At this point, it's looking like next year that they have their application. Casella, the trash company, has the ability to service the landfill. And Mark or Jim, please jump in if I misspeak. And they have resubmitted an application, which was originally declined by the New Hampshire DES, and they are looking for letters of support, particularly from member towns who use the services.
And this goes back to 2019 when Casella, 2018.
Right.
It was a very lengthy process. Right at the end of that process, and Nancy, please jump in if you heard anything different, or Tara, if you heard anything different in North Country Council. So Casella had this application in for the expansion for phase 4 of the Bethlehem landfill. They were processing the application, and at the very end, just before a decision had to be issued by DES in February, or in 2019, they were told, in February, they were told that that the rules had changed basically, and that they were not going to get their extension.
So this was, sorry, February of 2019 or 2020?
Well,
Oh, and sorry, we'll
it
take
was
that.
at the end of 2019. I don't have a date, and that was, go ahead.
Oh, he's gonna, for the record, Bill Larson.
And so getting ready for town meeting of 2020, we were unsure what the exact end date was for the landfill. Just before town meeting, we were assured that the very earliest it would be April of 21, but more probably into 22 or 23 because of measures that Casella was taking to reduce use at the landfill and extend the use beyond April of 21. So we did not feel, there were no budgetary issues for town meeting in March. And in fact, right after, or right before town meeting, they told us that they were pretty sure they could get to as long as 23. So we, from Jim and my perspective, we had kind of dropped it to do some planning potentially in 21. But now with what happened at the North Country Council, it seems that we are accelerating back to the April 21 end date for the Bethlehem landfill. And they were looking at an expansion that would take them out as far as 26, which was phase 4. And right at the end of that approval process, back in 2019, DES came up with regulatory reasons and basically shut down the phase 4 process, permitting process, and said, unless you can do all of these things, we will not even consider your application anymore. And Casella said, we can't meet those requirements, so we're going to pull the permit. And that's what's precipitated the whole thing, that April 21. So we had April 21, then an extension out to maybe 23, and now we're back to April 21. We have not done any planning through the spring or any discussion, so that's why we're having this talk, because we have basically been sitting here waiting or thinking that we had an extended period of time beyond what we would have to do at town meeting of 21, going forward with finding an alternative to the landfill. So,
Sorry, guys, Rob just.
I was surprised when Nancy brought this up on Thursday that we were back to the April 21 timeframe.
So does Casella feel like it's realistic? Have they made the changes that DES was looking for in their, is it a resubmittal of what they had done before?
Well, Casella said they couldn't do it.
Well, right, but so what is the paperwork that we've been looking at?
Well, the paperwork that you've been looking at was the original application, I believe. So
Yeah.
that's what what we should have.
But let me understand. As I read it, Casella said, this is what we want to do. DES came back and said, nope, that won't work. Here are the conditions that we will consider it for. Casella said, we can't do that. And simplistically, what that means is after April 30th, 2021, that landfill is no longer viable. Did I summarize it kind of the way we think it is today?
But so the public hearing that they're having,
That's right. Now, Casella is going back, I believe, Nancy, Tara, correct me if I'm wrong, Casella's going back and saying, can't we go back to our original application? Because there is a detrimental effect on all of the communities that use that landfill, right?
right,
And North Country Council is trying to help them by getting letters of support for that reapplication. Is that what you heard on the 29th, Nancy?
You know, I didn't hear anything specific about the letters of support or anything like that, but I did read most of the document that you sent. So it looks like the biggest difference is that the state thinks that, according to their calculations, there's plenty of capacity in the state, and there's plenty of capacity for our county and the other northern counties. And so we don't need we don't need that landfill. Whereas, of course, we disagree. And so now is the time for both Casella and us to push back.
Right, and because two things on that. Number one, their calculation of capacity in the state, when you look at the way that they calculate it, they do not take into account any of the outside of New Hampshire waste that is dumped in those landfills. So their expected life use for landfills here in Hampshire waste generation. Unfortunately, all of the landfills in the state, including Bethlehem, are being used by Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine communities. But none of that waste is used in the calculation of the life cycle. That's number one. And number two, they don't take into account the transportation cost or time that it's going to take to drive from here to Rochester or here somewhere else to dispose of the trash, because it's significantly higher, right? Like 3 times higher than driving to Bethlehem.